Australian-built cars regularly exceeded 400,000 kilometers in taxi service. Some pushed past 500,000 with nothing but basic maintenance. Most people think Japanese imports are the only reliable cars, but they're wrong. Australia built some of the toughest, most durable vehicles ever to turn a wheel. So these are the 10 most reliable Australian cars ever built. Starting with number 10, Holden Commodore VS. The VS Commodore doesn't get the respect it deserves, but ask any mechanic who worked on Commodores through the 1990s and 2000s and they'll tell you the same thing. This is one of the toughest Commodores ever built. The secret was the 3.8-liter Buick V6, a simple, understressed pushrod engine that just worked. The VS featured extremely simple electronics compared to what came later. Fewer sensors, fewer computers, and fewer things to go wrong. What really proved the VS's durability was its widespread use in taxi and fleet service. These cars ran day and night, covering enormous distances with minimal downtime. VS Commodores regularly pushed 300,000 kilometers and kept running strong. The VS represented Holden engineering at its most practical. No unnecessary complexity, just a well-built car designed to survive Australian roads. Moving on to number 9, Toyota Avalon. This Toyota was spectacularly unpopular when new. Australians thought it looked odd, and sales were disappointing. But here's what buyers missed. The Avalon was one of the most reliable cars Toyota ever built in Australia. It featured Toyota's proven 3.0-liter V6, a smooth engine that delivered effortless performance and remarkable durability. The Avalon's reputation for reliability only became apparent years after production ended. Owners who bought them cheap discovered they had stumbled onto something special. These cars just didn't break. The engine would run for hundreds of thousands of kilometers. The transmission shifted smoothly year after year. Today, the Avalon has developed a cult following among people who prioritize reliability over image. The Avalon proved that Toyota's manufacturing standards in Australia were world-class. But Toyota wasn't the only manufacturer building bulletproof cars in Australia. Holden had a reputation for producing sedans that could survive anything the outback threw at them. Next up at number 8, Holden Kingswood HQ. This HQ represents reliability through simplicity. Built from 1971 to 1974, it was engineered when cars were mechanically straightforward and built to be repaired rather than replaced. The HQ's reliability came from its large, understressed engines, whether fitted with the 6-cylinder or V8. The engines never had to work hard. Owners in rural Australia could drive HQ Kingswoods hundreds of thousands of kilometers with nothing more than basic servicing. What really made the HQ reliable was how easy it was to fix. Everything was mechanical, simple, and repairable with basic tools. A farmer in the outback could keep an HQ running indefinitely. Also, parts were cheap, and any country mechanic could work on them. The HQ proved Holden understood what Australians needed, a car that would start every morning and keep running no matter what. Heading to number 7, Mitsubishi Magna. This Mitsubishi earned a reputation for absolute reliability. Produced in Australia from 1985 to 2005, the Magna was designed specifically for Australian road conditions. At the heart of its reliability was the 6G72 V6 engine, one of the most durable power plants ever fitted to an Australian-built car. This engine could run for hundreds of thousands of kilometers with minimal maintenance beyond regular oil changes. The Magna's suspension was engineered to handle Australia's poor road surfaces without falling apart. Where European cars would develop rattles, the Magna just absorbed the punishment. Fleet buyers loved the Magna because it combined reliability with affordability. The Magna became the car for people who just needed transportation they could trust. But while Mitsubishi was building dependable family sedans, Holden was about to produce their final Commodore, and they made sure it was their best. We are now down to number 6, Holden Commodore VF. The VF Commodore was the final Commodore, and Holden made sure it was their best. Produced from 2013 to 2017, the VF represented everything Holden had learned from decades of building large sedans. Build quality on the VF was the best Holden had ever achieved. Panel gaps were tight, interior materials felt solid, everything was assembled with precision that earlier Commodores couldn't match. The VF's V8 models featured GM's LS series engines, proven power plants with a reputation for durability built over decades. These engines were under-stressed, which meant they operated comfortably within their mechanical limits. The VF also benefited from Holden's understanding of Australian conditions. The cooling systems were sized for extreme heat, the suspension was tuned for poor roads. Absolutely every aspect reflected decades of experience. Tragically, the VF's excellence came too late to save Holden's manufacturing, but it ensured that Australia's automotive industry ended on a high note. Before we get into top 5, if you are enjoying this video, make sure to like and subscribe if you want, of course. At number 5, we have the Holden Commodore VT. The VT became the best-selling Commodore generation in history, and reliability was a major reason why. Launched in 1997, the VT represented a clean-sheet redesign. The VT's 3.8-liter Ecotec V6 was the key to its reliability. This was a simple pushrod engine that prioritized durability over sophistication. It wasn't the most powerful or smoothest, but it was virtually bulletproof. The Ecotec V6 could handle neglect that would destroy more complex engines. Maintenance costs were remarkably low. Parts were cheap due to high production volumes. Any mechanic in Australia could work on this Commodore. The VT's success in taxi service proved its durability. These Commodores regularly reached 300,000 kilometers in taxi service and kept going. This combination of durability, affordability, and safety made the VT the default choice for Australian families. But while Holden was perfecting the Commodore, their rivals at Ford were building something even tougher, and it all came down to one engine. Heading to number 4. Ford Falcon BA. The BA Falcon marked a turning point for Ford Australia. This was the first generation to feature the Barra engine, a name that would become legendary. The BA's Barra 4.0-litre inline-6 was an all-new engine designed specifically for Australian conditions. The iron block construction gave it strength that aluminum engines couldn't match. The engineering was conservative and proven. What made it special was its combination of power and reliability. This engine produced genuine performance while maintaining the mechanical durability needed for taxi service. It was a rare combination. High-mileage BA Falcons frequently exceeded 300,000 kilometers without major engine work. The Barra engine's reputation for durability was built largely on the BA generation's success. But before the BA, there was another Falcon that taxi drivers loved, a car often criticized for its styling, but praised for its mechanical toughness. Breaking in the top 3, we have the Ford Falcon AU. The AU Falcon is often remembered for its controversial styling, but mechanically, it was one of the most reliable Falcons Ford ever built. Produced from 1998 to 2002, the AU featured Ford's proven 4.0-litre inline-6. The AU's reliability came from its mechanical simplicity. The electronics were straightforward. Engine management was proven. Everything was prioritized for reliability over complexity. Parts for the AU were cheap due to high production volumes. Repairs were simple, and any mechanic in Australia had experience with AU Falcons. The AU's success in the taxi industry proved its durability beyond doubt. These Falcons regularly reached 300 to 400,000 kilometers before major work was needed. Some operators reported examples exceeding 500,000 kilometers with nothing more than routine maintenance. But as tough as the AU Falcon was, Ford built an even better version, and it featured the most legendary engine ever developed in Australia. The second place on this list takes the Ford Falcon FG. The FG Falcon represented the pinnacle of Ford's Australian engineering. Produced from 2008 to 2014, the FG refined everything that made the BA and BF successful. At the heart of the FG's reputation was the Bara engine in its most developed form. By the FG generation, Ford had perfected this inline six to the point where it became genuinely legendary. The iron block construction delivered strength. The engineering was conservative and proven. What made the FG's Bara special was its combination of performance and durability. The turbocharged variant could produce serious power, but even the standard version was strong and reliable. Build quality on the FG was the best Ford Australia had ever achieved. Panel gaps were tight, materials felt premium. Everything felt like a car from a manufacturer that had learned from decades of experience. High-mileage FG Falcons frequently exceeded 300,000 kilometers without major mechanical issues. The FG represented Australian automotive engineering at its absolute best. But there's one car that stands above even the legendary FG Falcon, a car that regularly exceeded 400,000 kilometers in taxi service, a car built to Toyota's global standards in Australia. The car taking the gold medal is Toyota Camry. The Toyota Camry is the most reliable car ever built in Australia, and it's not even close. Produced in Melbourne from 1987 to 2017, the Australian-built Camry set reliability standards that no other locally manufactured vehicle could match. Toyota's manufacturing standards were the foundation of the Camry's legendary durability. Every Camry that rolled off the line in Australia was built to the same exacting standards Toyota applied globally. Quality control was obsessive. Assembly was precise. The Camry's four-cylinder engines were extremely durable power plants that could run for enormous distances with minimal maintenance beyond regular oil changes. These weren't high-tech engines with complex electronics. They were simple, well-engineered power plants designed to prioritize longevity. What really proved the Camry's reliability was its dominance in the Australian taxi industry. Camrys became the default choice for taxi operators because they could survive constant use better than any alternative. Many taxi Camrys exceeded 400,000 kilometers with proper maintenance. Some pushed past 500. A few exceptional examples reportedly reached 600,000 kilometers before major engine work was needed. These weren't isolated cases. They were common enough that taxi operators simply expected this level of durability. The Camry's electrical systems were equally impressive. Where other cars developed electrical gremlins, the Camry just worked. The air conditioning ran reliably year after year. The electronics didn't fail. Maintenance costs were reasonable despite Toyota's premium position. Parts were widely available, and because Camrys rarely needed major repairs, total cost of ownership was lower than vehicles with cheaper purchase prices but higher failure rates. When Toyota closed the Camry production line in 2017, Australia lost access to the most reliable, locally built car it would ever see. The Camry proved that world-class manufacturing could succeed in Australia. The Australian-built Camry wasn't exciting. It wasn't fast and it wasn't stylish, but it was nearly indestructible, and for 3 decades it set the standard for automotive reliability in Australia. Each one of these 10 cars proved that Australian manufacturing could produce vehicles that survived the harshest conditions on Earth, from the simple, mechanical reliability of the HQ Kingswood to the engineering excellence of the Toyota Camry. These cars earned their reputations through years of service. Australian conditions are brutal. Extreme heat, terrible roads, and long distances. The cars that survived here had to be genuinely tough. These 10 proved they were exactly that. The era of Australian automotive manufacturing is over. The factories are closed, but the cars remain, many still running strong hundreds of thousands of kilometers after they left the factory. These are the most reliable Australian cars ever built, not because of marketing claims, but because they proved it on the road, year after year, kilometer after kilometer. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your mates. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.